Oh, yeah, it is DJ LP back in the house. Thank you so much for joining me. You are listening to Passion Radio, and I am here once again today with a stunning and startlingly honest and open interview for you all to listen to savor and to overstand. Yes, I am DJ LP, and every Monday, 2 till 4, here I am on Passion Radio, talking about subjects that are related to and including the issues relating to dying, death, and grief. Thank you so much for joining me. And I also want to say hi and thank you to our guest today, Peter Broderick. Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
Hi, El. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
You are welcome. Thank you. Now, the reason why I've invited you, I mean, I've been trying to get hold of you for a long time. We always seem to miss each other, don't we? Um, you are a funeral director, and you've been doing this work for quite some time. So, could you please just sort of introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit about the work that you do?
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. As El says, I'm Peter Broderick from Gooding Funeral Services. We are a 100% Black family owned funeral business in Leeds, so not that far away. We were established in 2007 by my father-in-law, Mr. Hugh Gooding, and he set the business up, frankly, because he wanted to provide a service to his community.
Right.
He was very unhappy at how his own parents' funeral went, and he decided that he wanted to do a better job and provide a better service than he received himself.
Okay.
So he went about learning the trade, worked for other funeral directors, did work in and around the Leeds area and in Bradford. And then when he won a settlement from his employer, he was working as an engineer, and he was racially discriminated against. He won a settlement from his employer, and with that settlement, he set up his own funeral home here in Leeds.
Wow, perfect. And so 26 years later, here we are. Um, okay, and it's called
Absolutely.
Goodings.
It's
Goodings Funeral.
Gooding Funeral Services, yes.
Beautiful. Okay. And so, as we see then, as I've said, 26 years later, this is a business, a firmly established business that has been passed down through the generations.
That's right, yes. Yes.
Okay.
And yes, so myself, when Hugh sadly passed away, he passed away in 2012.
Right.
Myself, my wife, and my sister-in-law took the business on
Right.
and continued it in his name. And we now employ two of my sons and work
Okay.
in the business. One of them works full time, the other one works part time. So we're a generational business.
Beautiful. Okay. That is it's amazing. It's beautiful. And at a time when we're looking at, keeping our pounds within our communities and having businesses that we can hand down through generations, I think that your business is a really good model that we should be aiming to follow with regards to this. How have you found the funeral industry for yourself? What have your experiences been as an independent funeral director?
It's not been without its struggles. I know when my father-in-law started the business, because he'd come from an engineering background,
Yeah.
he was known in the community as an engineer.
Wow.
So he did a business degree part-time, and he
Okay.
also went to night school to learn how to become a funeral director. So when he popped up with a funeral business, people sort of didn't know whether or not he was qualified or experienced in the funeral industry because they'd not seen him working in the industry previously. So it takes time to win the trust of a community.
Yes.
But he stuck to it. He went out. He went and spoke to various groups, Black elders groups,
Okay.
various groups within the community to sort of let them know that he was qualified, he was experienced, he had the know-how, and he wanted to provide a high level of service. So it's not been without its struggles.
Yeah.
Um, but and also that there are other people, outside of our community who might look at us and think, well, we only do Black funerals. We only provide services to the African and Caribbean community, and we don't. We provide a service to everybody. We're right next door to a very large Sikh temple. We do a lot of Sikh funerals in the Leeds area, and there's also quite a diverse community within the area that we serve. So, we cover a broad range, and practically everyone who walks through our door is welcome, and we provide a high level of service to everybody that comes through our door.
Lovely. Okay. I think that your father-in-law was, he was, I don't know if the expression is
Yeah.
correct, but I was going to say he's on the money, but
Yeah.
he was also ahead of his time.
He certainly was. He certainly was. He was a forward thinker,
Yeah.
and he really went out of his way to make sure that he was able to provide that level of service. I mean, he had a lot of with regards to the Sikh community, for example, he had a lot of Sikh friends from his engineering days, and what he would do is use those contacts to find out from them, okay, if I'm doing a Sikh funeral, what sort of music should I play? What sort of prayers should be read at the service? He went to local Sikh temple and sat down with the elders there to work out, what would be a fitting service for a Sikh person. And so he really sort of went into it and learned the culture, he actually learned how to speak Punjabi, which is amazing to me. But yeah, he really went out of his way to learn traditions and cultures and everything else, so that he could stay ahead of the curve, and provide that high level of service to every community that he served.
Beautiful. Right. Okay. And I think that's amazing. He really did do his research, and it's only because he genuinely cared that he went out and he took the extra steps that other people, I can say that other people haven't bothered to take, and I think it makes all the difference, because it really is about building rapport with your communities, with the communities that you're serving. And yet the thing about, being a funeral director, or the work that we do, is that we are professional, we are qualified and fully able to work with people from all backgrounds. There's no sort of, community that we'd be able to say, no, I can't, cater to, because death is universal. It comes to us all. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And each community has its own way of dealing with death, and they've got their own funeral rites. They have their own funeral rituals. And
Yeah.
actually, having said that, not every Sikh person is going to deal with the funeral in the same way. There are some people who want differences. Not every Black person is going to deal with the funeral in the same way. There are people who want different services. Yes, we have an understanding of what people traditionally want, but we're also flexible enough and adaptable enough to be able to adapt if someone wants something slightly different, and we're happy to provide that service.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. I hear what you're saying. We've had a caller coming in just saying that they're having struggles hearing what you're saying. So I don't know what I apologize for everybody that's listening. But is there any way that you'd be able to turn your volume up, Peter?
We'll try. Let me just see if I
Okay.
can.
Look, is that how is that in
All right.
terms of the,
I think it's come up a little bit, but I'm sure that we'll be told if there's a problem. Okay. Yeah. So yes, everybody does their thing differently, don't they?
Yeah.
And even within our communities as well. I think that the reason for having, for using funeral directors that are within our communities is so that our rituals or traditions or ways can be allowed for without any feelings of, being an imposition, let's say.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And we recognize that, as I said, people do things differently. Different communities work differently and actually handle grief differently as well.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that we know is that people don't want to be pushed. They don't want to be hurried.
Yes.
But if people have a specific way of demonstrating their grief, then we will work with that. Obviously we have to work within a system and a structure. So, if we've allowed for, a 2-hour service at church and the burial is taking place afterwards, one thing that I always say to families is that regardless of what you do, I'm going to arrive at the cemetery on time.
Yes.
So, we have to, because we have to remain professional. We have to make sure that, if the preacher man decides he's going to have a long drawn out sermon, then unfortunately we may have to miss out on the last hymn. But I'm going to get to the cemetery on time, because I want to make sure that the family is not having to deal with the distress of having the council workers issuing, because they can issue fines, that all sorts of stuff can happen, and we just don't want that. And you also can miss your burial slot, and that's something we don't want to happen. So I always say to families, regardless, if you need to set the church service at half an hour earlier, then set the service half an hour earlier. We'll work with that. But the burial is booked at this time, and we are going to get to the cemetery on time. And that's what I always say to families.
Yeah. Okay. This work really is, it's quite like, arranging events, isn't it? And
yes,
time management is really important. And I think that's often a sticking point, let's say, for people within our communities. Yeah. So with regards to time then, do you sort of have a conversation with the family beforehand to say, this is how it has to be, and let them know that there are fines that are issued late?
Yes. I mean, what we do is we will start with the committal. So that's either the burial or the cremation. To start with the time of the committal, and then we work backwards during the funeral arrangement. We work backwards. So we will work out what time we need to leave the church or the funeral venue in order to get to the committal on time. Okay, so now we've got to work out how long the service has got to be, and that's the bit where we can be a little bit more flexible. But the time that we leave that venue is the time that we're going to leave the venue. And I'm always very clear with families that look, we have to get to the committal on time, otherwise you may miss your slots, and that will be devastating for everybody involved. So it's at that time when I guess when emotions aren't at such a peak, because on the actual funeral day itself, people are very emotional. People are very grief stricken. People may want to stay behind, but sadly we have to leave at a certain time in order to get to the venue, to get to the committal venue, and we need to get there on time. I always factor in extra time, because you have to, just in case something happens, if there's traffic, if there's an accident on the road or something like that, we have to factor in extra time. So we always factor in extra time, just so that we know that we're going to get to the committal at the right time, and so there's going to be no headache when we get there. So yes, we do have that conversation with families. We know that, for example, if people are going to be giving tributes in church, and we have to limit tributes to a set time. So tributes have to be sort of limited to 3 to 4 minutes maximum. If somebody decides they're going to sing all 12 verses of an old hymn, that we can't factor that in. We just have to sort of let them know that no, a tribute is a tribute, and a tribute is going to be 4 minutes. Can't come up and give you tribute and then sing 12 verses of the Old Testament hymn. We can't allow for that. So we have that conversation prior to the funeral day itself, because there's so many emotions on the day of the funeral. We don't want to sort of upset anyone, and we don't want to be sort of chivying people along. That's not what we want to do. We recognise that people are in grief, but at the same time, we've got a professional responsibility to both the family and to the people who own the crematorium or the cemetery.
Yes, that's it, because it's a matter as well, with regards to, as well as the community and the family, it's also your reputation that's on the line with every funeral. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it really matters that you are doing your work, and you're seen to be doing it as well.
Yeah.
With regards to your work, you are the only African Caribbean funeral director in the whole of West Yorkshire. Am I correct?
In the whole of the north of England.
Wow.
Actually, I think that the nearest other Black-owned funeral business is in the Midlands, it's in Birmingham.
Right.
And there's also, I think there's another family who own a business in Wolverhampton as well.
Yeah.
So north of Birmingham, we're the only Black-owned that I'm aware of Black-owned funeral business in the north of the UK.
Wow, that is something. That is amazing. So basically, or literally, you are here servicing the Black community from the whole of the north, from Birmingham upwards. Well, upwards of Birmingham, let's say.
Yeah. We're prepared to work in other cities. We have done that before. We serviced a funeral in Coventry a couple of years ago. Just prior to that, we also worked with a family in London who we knew personally, and they wanted us to take the funeral. It involves logistics. We've got to make sure that we've got the use of a chapel of rest in that city. We also hire vehicles in from that location, just so that we can run the funeral smoothly. Everything runs smoothly, and with the family have got somewhere where they can go and view. But we can work in other cities. So we work throughout the whole of Yorkshire. We've done funerals in Manchester, in Nottingham. So we've worked all over the place.
Okay. And I imagine that would have been sort of a necessity as well, as it's only kind of recently that, other Black funeral directors have been coming on board, isn't it? So I suppose in previous years you have been up and down the country, servicing, our communities as one of the forerunners, as one of the businesses that has been most established in the UK. Wow. So with that in mind, then, how would you say that you are received, or how would you say that death in general is received by people from our communities?
I think certainly more in more recent years, people are more prepared to speak about death and dying. No, I don't think, certainly among the younger generation. When I say the younger generation, I mean people who are my age and younger. I'm 51. That people who are my age and younger are more prepared to talk about end of life matters. And I think it's important to have those conversations, because unfortunately, as I always say to people, we're all in a queue, and we don't know when we're going to get to the front of that queue. We just don't know. But we have to prepare for it. Between myself and my wife, for example, we've had conversations about, she would like to be cremated. She'd like to donate all of her organs. She would like to have her ashes scattered in the Caribbean Sea. And those are the things that she wants. I personally, I want to be buried. And so we've had that conversation, so that we know that, as I said, I could step out of my door and the number 3 heading to the city centre knocks me over and takes me out. That can happen to anybody. It can happen to anyone. So sadly at the weekend, in a former life I was a jazz musician. I used to play the drums in a jazz band, and at the weekend, sadly, one of the people I used to perform with regularly, sadly, this gentleman passed away, and myself and my son went to go and collect him. He passed away at home. So we just don't know when death is going to be upon us. So we have to have those conversations, and it doesn't invite death to your door by talking about it. It doesn't mean that you're next if you just start talking about your funeral. It just means that you're prepared and you have that conversation. You let your family know what it is that you want, and then you live your life, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Our sort of elders, sometimes our elders don't want to talk about death, and I understand that, but some elders do. They'll do it in different ways, and they'll give us signals to prepare us for the time when they're not going to be around anymore. So our elders may say something like, "Oh Lord, me soon dead, and no better fight when me dead and gone, no better fight one another." They're telling us to prepare for a time when they're not going to be around, and they may do it in jest, because they know that it's painful for us as younger people to hear, but they know that there's going to be a time when they're not going to be around, and they're preparing us for that time. So we should have the conversations and talk about end of life and preparation. Talk about lasting power of attorney. These are important conversations to have, because you may, let's say, for example, if you suffered a stroke, the stroke might not kill you, but it may incapacitate you to an extent where you're unable to make decisions for yourself. And if you have a lasting power of attorney, that someone who can make decisions on your behalf, can make financial decisions, can make health decisions on your behalf, then that can only be a good thing. It just means that people are not guessing as to what it is that you want. So we have to have those conversations. Plan your funeral, get a will, get a lasting power of attorney. These are things that are needed, and also get life insurance. get life insurance. Somebody posted something once, and it really sort of like it struck home to me. And their post was quite short, and what they said was, "GoFundMe is not a funeral plan."
Yes,
and that really struck home to me, because we need to make sure that we have things prepared for ourselves, so that our families left behind are not running around trying to work out how they're going to manage to pay for this event. That's effectively what it is. It's an event.
Yes. Wow, that is deep, isn't it? GoFundMe is not a funeral plan, and that just shows that there was no planning, there was no conversation, there was no foresight of the inevitable. And it's a sad day when you see things like that on Facebook, and it's like every day. Well, whenever I do go on Facebook, somebody else has passed away. We're hearing about it all the time within our communities, and it's that lack of planning that has really kind of led me to the work that I do as well, because it's necessary. Families fall apart. They tend to fall apart. They disintegrate when the elder passes away. And I've spoken to so many people who are, I'll say to them, "Well, what was your mum's favorite color?" "I don't know." "What was your dad's favorite song or music?" "I don't know." So it's these little conversations that it doesn't have to be heavy. Like, as you said, sometimes you approach the elder and they'll say, "What, you want me for dead?" So, it's these little things, but it's conversations that we have to be having. And I'm enlightened by the fact that you want to be buried. Your wife would like to be cremated and have her organs donated. This is like really important, because traditionally and typically, I think we as communities tended to go more towards the burial route, and without consideration of donating organs.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think that I mean, it's a personal choice. It's a personal, very, very personal. Some people have legitimate reasons for not wanting to donate organs or not wanting to be cremated, and everything is a personal choice.
Yes.
So there shouldn't be any pressure on anyone to donate organs.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be any pressure on anyone to have either burial or cremation. It should be a personal choice. It should be something that someone's thought about and considered, and then has come to a decision and have their own personal point of view on that. I mean, with regards to organ donation, I mean, my father, who's no longer with us, my father, he was a kidney patient, and he had kidney failure at quite a young age. And I know that there are people in our community who have kidney problems, and that can come from a whole host of different issues. For example, high blood pressure, that sort of thing. So, there is a need in our community for donors.
Right. Yes.
There's a definite need, and if it's your loved one, then you would hope that someone had donated their organs. If it was your loved one who needed a kidney or a liver or something like that, you'd hope that somebody would have donated. Sadly, in our community, that's quite there's quite a low instances of people donating their organs. But as I said, there should be no pressure. It should just be something that someone gets the information, gets the facts, reads up on it, does their own research, and then makes a decision, and that decision should be theirs and theirs alone.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. Also, as well, when it comes to blood,
yes,
there are also many varying and conflicting thoughts about donating blood, but oftentimes if it's not there when we need it, then that's when we realize how important it is. And again, it's too late often at that time.
Absolutely.
Have you found then that there has been a change in attitude with regards to burial versus cremation overall within the industry?
I think that certainly within the Black community, there's definitely more of a leaning towards burial. Yeah. Although we are getting more Black people now being cremated. It's a cheaper option to be cremated. Is cheaper than to be buried. Burial requires that someone's left to sort of tend the grave, that sort of thing. Burial spaces are becoming less and less as well. That's the thing. We're running out of burial space. And with that in mind, the cemetery authorities they're increasing their prices at an astronomical rate. I understand, and I don't know whether this is the case, but I think it's the case that that they've put a premium. King Kirklees have put a premium on Friday afternoon burials. Right. And I understand that to be buried on a Friday afternoon is more expensive than the rest of the week. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I know that was something that was being talked about a couple of years ago at least. Yeah. Okay. I'm not aware of that. Okay. But that is like, I don't know. I personally would see that as a direct hit. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Because I don't know whether it's the case or not. I know that it was spoken about a couple of years ago at least that Friday afternoon burials would be more expensive. And yes, and that is a direct aim, direct hits at particularly at our community. And I don't know whether that's actually happened or not. But that's not the case in Leeds where we are, but we do have more burials in our community than cremations, although the numbers are increasing in terms of cremation. I think overall, in terms of the UK population, cremation is far more popular than burial. When you're looking at the whole of society, you're looking at cremation being quite, very, very, very much more popular than burial. Right. Okay. Thank you for that information. I'm going to have to do some research now
and I think make some phone calls and see what's going on with regards to that. And this is for this reason that we need more people from our communities in the industry, because
Absolutely.
decisions like this can be made and they won't be opposed, and this is a direct impact on the cost of our funerals going up yet again. So yeah, I think I will be having a conversation, or phone around just to see how the land lies with regards to that.
I mean, the other thing is that there's no fixed rule that says that we have to be buried on a Friday either.
True.
So, and I know that, when we get calls and people asking for a funeral to happen on a Friday, if we've got a Friday free, that's not a problem. It's when we've got funerals booked in for the next 3 or 4 Fridays, and then that family was saying, well, we're prepared to wait. And wait 3, 4, 5, 6 Fridays away because it has to be on a Friday. Funerals don't have to happen on a Friday.
Yeah,
I know that people want them on a Friday because it means that it's attached to a weekend and they can have a drink and that sort of thing. That's absolutely fine. But funerals don't have to happen on a Friday. They could happen on a Monday. Monday's attached to a weekend also. So.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And it is, I suppose it has become a tradition, hasn't it, that a funeral would automatically take place on a Friday. But, one thing that I'm kind of realizing is that these traditions are often based on something that was more a convenience than an actual sort of spiritual or, I don't know, spirit-led belief or understanding. Yeah. Okay. So, with regards to being a funeral director, what did you do before you came into this industry?
Oh, it's well, I did a lot of different things. I started out life after leaving school in the catering industry. So I was a chef, and I trained as a restaurant and hotel manager. That's what first thing I did when I left school.
Okay.
I then went into youth and community work. So I worked in various sort of youth and community projects, social housing, resettlement work, and that's been throughout the country. Really, I did a lot of work in Leeds, and I worked outside of Leeds as well. I worked down south for a little bit. I worked for Hertfordshire Council. So I've worked in various places in sort of youth and community work type settings. When my wife and I got married in 2008, I knew that her father was a funeral director. Yeah. And he really wanted me to come and work with him. We were living in London for a short while, and then we moved back to Leeds, and he really wanted me to come and work for him. And I said, well, I've got a job already, and this is not the work that I want to do. Funeral work was not something that I ever wanted to do.
Yes.
It was, I think it frightened the life out of me, to be honest.
Right. Okay.
I just thought, no, it's not something I ever want to do. And I actually got a job working for a youth work project next door to the funeral parlour that my father-in-law owned.
Right.
So he would call me at lunchtime. He'd call me and ask me if I'd come across and help him. And I said, no, I'm not going to come and help you. I'm actually at work.
Yeah.
But he just kept on trying. He was very persistent. And then around 2010, our shiny new coalition government came to power and decided that youth work was no longer important. And so by 2011, I was made redundant as a youth worker. And at that point, he approached me and said, look, I want you to come and work for me. Just come in, just answer the phones. You don't have to do anything else. Just come in and answer the phones. Deal with inquiries. You don't have to come into the back. just come and answer the phone, sit at the front in the reception and answer the phone for me. So that's what I did for a little while. But he had his plan. He knew that he wanted me to work in throughout the business and to start to lead and direct funerals. So that's how I came into the industry.
Right.
He sadly he became ill at the beginning of sorry, I think March 2012 he became ill. What was it, March? About May, sorry, May 2012 he became ill. Right. And he had already been out on funerals with him and sort of he showed me how what he does in terms of directing funerals. He'd taken me out with him on sort of collections, home collections when people have passed away at home. Yeah. And so I had enough knowledge at that point to sort of be able to lead a funeral and to organize a funeral, because whenever he did an arrangement with the family, he would get me to book things in. So I would book the cemetery in, I'd hire the coach, I'd do all these different jobs that were related to the funeral. But then he would lead the event itself, the actual funeral itself on the day. So I had enough knowledge to be able to take on and lead a funeral. And then sadly he didn't, his illness didn't last very long. He was ill for about 7 weeks and then sadly he passed away. So then myself and my wife took the business on and were joined by my sister-in-law. We, in keeping with his standards, my father-in-law's standards, he always felt that people should be qualified in the work that they're doing. They should have a theoretical knowledge of what they're doing. So we were members of the National Association of Funeral Directors, anyway, as a business, but we went to them and did their courses in terms of funeral directing and funeral arranging. So we did courses with the National Association and with the British Institute of Funeral Directors as well, because we wanted to make sure that people knew that when they came to us, they were dealing with qualified personnel and well-trained personnel. So that's what we sort of tried to keep up with, and we think it's something that's really important, that we're not out here just trying a thing. We're professionals, and we're qualified in what we're doing. So I think in about 2013 and 14 we did our funeral directing courses, and we continually update our professional development at all times when we can. And the staff that we've got in now, we're also putting them on courses as well, because it's important that families know that you're qualified in the area, particularly in an unregulated industry, which is what the funeral industry is.
Yeah. In recent years, there have been quite a few media reports on what I would call fly-by-nights, who are just, able to set up as funeral directors and run with it, without any of the qualifications needed or any of the storage, and equipment.
Absolutely.
And this is, I'm struggling to find words. It's awful.
Yes, it is. It is.
It's awful.
And it's a real blight on the industry as well.
Yeah.
Because when you hear about people who are whose facilities leave a lot to be desired, and not everybody can start out with a fully functioning embalming room, a mortuary facility, we're quite blessed in that my father-in-law, he set the business up to be self-sustaining, so he knew that he'd have an amount of storage, he had a fully equipped embalming room, and a workshop, so he could organize his own coffins and that sort of thing. So he saw that as a way that he would make himself look much more professional than, as you say, the fly-by-nights who didn't have their own premises and that sort of thing. But it is a blight on the industry, and when then people get caught out by having substandard storage, not having refrigerated storage, that sort of thing, and it makes the whole industry look bad. we have a policy, and my father-in-law started this, whereby if anybody comes to our premises and says that they want to look around, I'm happy to show someone around our premises. I'm happy to show someone, as long as it's not in use. I'm happy to show someone our embalming room. I'm happy to show someone through to our workshop and show them how the equipment works. I'm happy to do that. We don't have blinds, because a lot of funeral directors have black blinds across the windows. You can't see, and it's sort of a bit of a mystery what goes on in there. Our blinds are open. We want people to be able to come in, and we want it to be welcoming, so people can come in. We have people who come in and say, "Oh, you're going to get the kettle on." It's like, yeah, sure. We'll sit down, have a cup of tea with them, and have a chat with them and talk about how they're doing and how their family is. And we have people who we've done funerals for in the past come and visit us, and that's how it's supposed to be. Because we're part of the community.
Yes.
And so that means that we should be open to people just to for coming in and having a chat with us. That shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, okay. I really like that, because there is so much mystery surrounding this industry, and that has led to so much fear as well. Oh, I don't know what goes on in there. So come in and find out what goes on in here,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, my father-in-law, when he started he used to go out and do talks to like say Black Elders organizations, day clubs, when elders who go to day clubs, that sort of thing. He used to go out and do talks with them, and he would organize coach trips up to the crematorium, because people were so mystified by the whole cremation aspect of the work. People wanted to know what goes on at a crematorium. And actually, if you go to a crematorium and ask to be shown around, they should show you around. They should show you around. They're not gonna show you anything that's going to breach anyone's confidentiality, or allow you to see someone's name on a nameplate, that sort of thing. They're not gonna allow you to do that, but they should show you around. So he used to organize coach trips for elders groups to go and visit a crematorium, to see what it's like, to see what happens, so they can demystify some of the myths that they've got. So one of the myths is that everybody gets cremated together, and at the end of the day, they separate out all the ashes. It would probably take 4 or 5 days to cremate 10 people together. So that doesn't happen. Each person is cremated individually in their own chamber, and then those ashes and the remains are then taken out, and everything's labeled, so you know exactly whose ashes that you've got. And then they're put aside to cool, but the label's still on them, so they know exactly whose ashes are within which container. So but he would take people up there to show them that there's no mystery to cremation, and this is what happened. There's someone in the cremation chamber right there. After that's finished, they'll allow the chamber to cool down. Then they'll take the remains out, and then they're put into what's known as a cremulator, which is pretty much it looks like a large washing machine with ball bearings in, large ball bearings, and then it grinds the remains into dust, and that's what you receive when you get your ashes afterwards. Now, he would take people to those on those crematorium tours. Other funeral directors complained.
Really?
Yeah, and said that he was trying to gain an advantage in the industry by organizing these trips. He was trying to demystify the industry.
Yes.
And they complained. So the council stopped him from doing it. So that's what happened there. I mean, he was all about demystifying the industry, making people feel, know that there's nothing mysterious about what we do.
Yes.
And openly talking about the whole industry, and because he really wanted more people who look like himself in the industry to take an interest and not be afraid and that sort of thing. And that's really what he was about, and that's really what we're about. We want to see more people who look like us in the industry, so that when, for example, when I go to a a crematorium.
Yeah.
And I'm fully dressed in my funeral directing uniform. I've got my name badge on and everything else.
Yeah.
Tie everything. And I go in and I'll say, I've come to collect so-and-so's ashes.
Right.
The staff said to me, oh, it's only the funeral director who can collect the ashes. So I sort of stood for a minute and I said, okay, tell me, what does it, and I looked myself up and down. I said,
yes,
what does the funeral director look like to you?
Yeah.
This one, bright red, because she knew that she just assumed that I'm some random, even though I'm fully dressed as a funeral director.
Yeah.
All she saw was a black face.
Yeah.
So we need to get more people who look like us in the industry, so that is a less and less occurrence within the industry. We need to get more people working for the council, in the bereavement offices, so that we're not having to deal with this nonsense. We're not having to deal with grave diggers who don't want to stay behind and dig our graves for us, and that's because we've had all of that.
Right.
We've had all of that, and it's distressing for the families. So we need to see more people who look like us in the industry, so that is lessened and lessened and lessened.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to put some music on to see us out this hour. But thank you so much. You've touched on so many different points that I wanted to discuss. But it's interesting because I was speaking with Maxine a few weeks ago, and she had the same experience.
Yeah.
Which means then that there is a real problem there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Okay. I'm going to play us out now on this hour with Sergio Mendes. That's enough for me. And I'll see you after the break. Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you are throughout the earth. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is DJ LP, otherwise known as Laura Pusey, and I am here live on Passion Radio for the second hour of this interesting interview that we are having with Peter Broderick, the funeral director of Goodings, based in Leeds. So I want to say thank you for coming back for this second hour, Peter. I know that you said before that you were a jazz man, which is why I have opened and closed the shows with jazz this afternoon.
Thank you.
Recently, I was interviewing Robin Watson from Profession Plumes, and he also was raised in a very musical background. So could you tell me more about you being what did you say? What was the instrument that you played in your band?
I was a drummer. I come from a family of musicians. So my eldest brother is a very, very good drummer. A fantastic drummer. So I kind of learned from him by watching him. And there was always music in our house. There was always a musical instrument. We always had a piano. My other brothers had guitars, that sort of thing. So there were always instruments around the house. But the thing that drew me was the drums. And I, in terms of my entry to sort of jazz music, one of my brothers, my brother Richard, I shared a room with him, and he would always play Miles Davis, a kind of blue album. He'd always play that at night time before he went to bed. So I would lay there in my bed listening to his music playing and thinking, this music just is outstanding. And I think I was probably about 12 or 13, something like that. But he'd always have his music on before he went to bed. So I'd listen to it, and so that music just became imprinted on my mind, in my heart. And I love that music. So I started collecting jazz albums when I was probably 14 or 15, and sort of scraped together a little bit of money and see if I could go down to the record shop and get another Miles Davis album, because I only really wanted Miles Davis or John Coltrane albums, and that's what I would do. Now, as a sort of 13, 14-year-old, listening to that type of music, I suppose I don't know, maybe I was seen as a little bit odd, because I would have that I'd have that on my Walkman as I'm walking around, and someone would say, "What are you listening to?" And I say, "Oh, just listen." And they'd be like, "Why are you listening to this?" because it's great music. So yeah, I'd listen to a lot of jazz music. I also we also had a lot of my sister used to play a lot of 80s pop music as well. So quite a lot of different types of music flowing through the house.
Yeah.
My brother Henry was really into the Police as a band.
Yeah.
He was really into the Police. He had all their albums. And so I'd listen to that music, and I've actually learned to play the drums by drumming along to the Police on the back of a chair, because I didn't have my own drum kit. So yeah, it was just music was always around the family. So it was something that I was kind of drawn to. And then when I got a bit older, I was able to get a set of drums and started my own. I played in a blues band at first, and then I started my own jazz band, and which actually started as a workshop. We set up a series of music workshops at the Mandela Center. My friend played the saxophone. My cousin played the bass. Another friend of mine played keyboard. So we just sort of would go down there and just work out with each other and try and learn some of this music that we were all sort of interested in, and try to sort of play it and develop it and create our own sort of influence on it. And so yeah, music's big for me.
Beautiful. And you've come from a large family as well.
Yes. I'm the youngest of 9.
Oh wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've 6 brothers. There were seven boys in total. Sadly, one of my brothers passed away at quite a young age. But my parents had seven boys and 2 girls, and
Wow.
we're all sort of into our various bits. My sister is an outstanding singer. Yeah, my sister Maggie, she does a lot of singing at funerals. And she's an outstanding singer. She's been a professional singer for a long time. And we're all into our music. So yeah, music's very, very big in our family.
Yes, and I think your family was big enough to be the Brodericks, like
Yes.
the Leeds version of the Jacksons. It could have. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think my eldest brother Ansel, he always had it in his head that we could be huge, we could be just like the Jacksons, and he'd have us stand in a line and sing lines and do little dance moves and that sort of thing. And he was a little bit crazy. He was a bit of a dictator, was Ansel, but he was a great guy, and he had a vision for what he wanted in terms of us performing musically. So we've all performed professionally in bands, except for my sister Maureen. She's not musical at all, but she loves her music. But everyone else has performed at various levels. I've sort of been in various bands and done tours, and there's a CD out there somewhere with my name on it as well somewhere.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so good to talk, isn't it? And sort of learn more and more about people when we speak to them. And I think we're coming from a background where we're sort of taught not to talk your business and not to say, not to speak much. Were you raised in a religious background?
Yes. My family, my parents were founder members of the New Testament Church of God in Leeds.
Wow. Okay.
And so we grew up in the church. My parents were not the type of they were not dogmatic in terms of religion. They were. I mean, my mum was very, very, very Christian, but she was not the sort of person who would sit you down and sort of tell you why aren't you accepting the Lord? Why she's not that sort of person.
Okay.
So we had a grounding in the Christian faith. We all went to New Testament Church of God. We all went to Sunday school. And but it wasn't sort of drilled into us that this is what you must do, sort of thing.
Okay, right, okay. Wow. So with regards to your sort of upbringing, the importance of music and religion, did you play in the church as well? Did the church have a band?
Yeah, the church had a band. The church had a fantastic band. I was never a part of that band. We would go to church to watch the band.
Right.
There was a guy called Paul Gale, who was the drummer, and Paul, he played with such authority, but at the same time he was so calm. So his hands would be moving around, looking as though they're in slow motion, and you're hearing all of these drum notes coming out, and I'm thinking, how is he playing that, being so calm? Paul Gale was like the wind. He really was. He was amazing, and it was just, so we would sit right at the front so we could see the band and see what they were doing. You know, my cousin would watch. My cousin, who was a bass player, he would watch the bass player Stephen Jones. I think he lives in Huddersfield, I believe. He would watch Stephen Jones playing the bass, and he was such a great bass player, but so calm, just laid back and just played the bass. They were a great band to sort of just to watch. So it was like getting a free concert every week.
I can imagine. Wow, it's lovely to hear about it. Wow. I think that we are music, and I think that the connection that we have to music is just so natural that, I don't know, we embody it. So wow, it's beautiful to hear that.
Yes, it is. Really.
And I must say, I'm sorry to hear that you've lost one of your playing mates. But it's so lovely that that you're taking care of him, and that you will be presiding over the service and the whole lot.
Yes. I mean, his name's Richard. He was just a great musician. He played the saxophone. He played the double bass. He was just a fantastic musician. He moved to Leeds, I think, in the mid or late 70s, and just stayed. And he played with lots and lots of different people. Recorded with lots of different people. He's just fantastic, great musician. And I think the last time I spoke to him, it was a couple of weeks ago, because there was a film made about one of his friends who was quite a prominent musician in the 80s. And they made a film about him, and he contributed to the film, some interviews, and they were showing it at the Seven Arts Centre in Leeds, which is a music centre in Chapel Allerton in Leeds. They were showing that film, so I called him to say, look, I knew he wasn't well, and I just called him to say, look, are you strong enough to be able to come out with me to watch this film? And unfortunately, he wasn't strong enough. He said, I won't be able to go. And it was sad, quite sad, because he was interviewed as a part of the making of that film, and he contributed to the film, and it would be nice for him to go out and see it, but he just wasn't strong enough to go. So yeah, it's quite sad that he's passed away, Richard. But it's sadly, it's just one of these things. As I say, we're all in a queue, and we don't know when we're going to reach the front.
Yeah, okay. I hear that completely. And another thing as well is this weekend, during there's a live cafe, what do we call it? Lost Cafe, where we will sort of meet online to discuss, grief within our community. And a lady was on there, and she was saying that she had lost her best friend. And we were talking about the different types of grief. Losing your mother is different to losing a friend, is different to losing a work colleague, for example. And our friendships are chosen and lifelong, aren't they? And so with you're talking a good 40 plus years, well over 40 plus years of friendship with Richard. So I'm sure it's an honor for you to be able to be there at this time for him and his family.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd be able to tell me, sort of, if you could share with us, what is like the procedure? So when you get that phone call to say somebody has passed away, what's it like? What could you give us a day in the life of a funeral director?
Yes, I mean most no 2 days are the same. We have very quiet periods sometimes where the phone is not ringing, and then we have very, very busy periods where the phone's ringing a lot. I mean, when someone dies at home, we get the call. We have to take some information over the phone. And sometimes you're getting calls from a distressed family member. So it can be quite difficult sometimes to note down the information, but we have to try and get as much information as we can. The place where they've passed away, their name, date of birth, that sort of thing. We get as much information over the phone as we can, and then we will let the family know that we will be able to attend within the next 90 minutes.
Okay.
Be able to collect the person and bring them into our care. Usually we will get there before then, but we allow sort of 90 minutes so that if it's out of hours, for example, we have to get the crew together to then come to our premises, pick up our private ambulance, and then take that to the place where the person's passed away. So we take the information over the phone. We will then go to the place where the person's passed away. Sometimes the family are there. Sometimes they're not there. Sometimes it's the police or a paramedic who's there. But we try to confirm the information that we were given over the phone. So we'll just check any spellings, make sure that names are spelled correctly, make sure that the date of birth is correct and everything else. Find out who their GP is. And all that information is all noted down. We also check to see if the person has any valuables with them.
Okay.
For example, rings, watches, that sort of thing. And we will ask the family, what do they want us to do? Do they want the valuables to remain with the person, or do they want us to remove them? Because the last thing that we want is to not make a note of that jewelry. And then when the person's in our care, the family then say, well, where's his bracelet? Or, that sort of thing. So we have to make quite comprehensive notes of what the person's got in their possession so that we were able to then account for it afterwards.
Okay.
So we will bring the person into our care. We will put identification bracelets on the person so we know exactly their name, date of birth, the address, and where we've collected them from. And then they'll be placed into our refrigerated storage area. We have to make sure that we identify the person because we don't want any mishaps. So we'll put identification bracelets on both arms, and we'll place them into the refrigerated unit, and then we'll put on the door of the fridge. We put their name on that level, so we know exactly who's at which level in the fridge, so we know exactly who that person is and where they've come from. Because I could go out and do a collection. Me and my son could go out and do a collection, and then the next week I'm on holiday. So the people who are coming in wouldn't know who that person is, but we have to make sure that we identify everyone at every stage, so that there are no mishaps and no misidentifications.
Okay.
It's different when someone passes away in hospital, because we will take the information over the phone. We'll find out where they've passed away. If they've passed away in hospital, we will collect them probably in the next couple of days. Well, it really will depend on which hospital they've passed away in as well, because we have to make appointments at the hospital to be able to go and collect someone. So we're in the mortuary. We'll find out what time they open, and make an appointment to go and collect that person. because they're working on an appointment basis at the hospital for collection. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it is quite in depth, isn't it? There's a lot of work in it. Yeah.
And it has to be. Yeah, it has to be. Because the last thing that you want is to have someone misidentified.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that everyone's identified and we know exactly where everyone is, and also so that families know where their loved one is. Because I think with some of the larger companies, they may have a shop front on the high street,
yes,
but there's no storage there.
Yes.
So they'll have a what they call a storage hub, which is where all of the people that passed away at home or they've collected from hospital, they'll take everyone to the storage hub. Now, if I'm going to the local high street funeral director and saying, you've got my mum in your care, yes, technically that's true, but she's not actually at that branch.
Yes.
And really and truly, people should know where their loved ones are. We are quite clear that from the moment we pick somebody up, they will remain in our care on our premises.
Yes.
Unless the only reason they would leave our premises before the funeral is if the coroner were to call us to say, we need to do an investigation into this person's death. Could you bring this person to the Leeds General Infirmary so they can have a post-mortem? We would contact the family and let them know. We've just had a call from the coroner, and they would have been called before us anyway. But we've just had a call from the coroner. They've asked to see your mum or your dad. They've asked to do a post-mortem, and we're going to be taking them either tomorrow morning or we're going to take them this afternoon. So they know exactly where their loved one is at all times. And then when we bring them back into our care, we will ring the family again and say, we've just been and collected your mum. She's back with us, and we'll get her prepared. So yeah, people should know where their loved ones are.
Yeah. Okay. With regards to the situation with the coroner, is it a legal obligation to provide them with the body when they request for it?
Yes, it is. What happens is that if for example, a person hasn't seen their own personal GP in the last 4 weeks, or if the death is unexpected or unexplained, then those cases are referred to the coroner. The coroner at that point can choose to take no action. So if, for example, someone had a long-term health issue, but they hadn't seen their GP for 4 weeks, the GP would refer it to the coroner. The coroner may look at their medical notes and say, well, this person's has been at end-stage kidney failure for the past 3 years. And that's likely what's killed them. So we're happy to refer that back to the GP, and then the GP can sign off the death certificate. But if the coroner requests someone and says, we need to see this person so we can look into how they've passed away, then yes, legally we have to take them to the coroner. The coroner would always speak to the family first, though. They would never request to see someone without having spoken to the family first.
Okay, right. Wow. Okay, cool. So with regards to the actual role then of the funeral, like there's many people, aren't there, that work within the funeral parlour, funeral home. So you've got your arranger, you've got your funeral director, who is more seen on the day. But as an independent, do you tend to do more of the work? Do you do, as an independent, do you do a lot of the work as well? Sort of different.
Yes, in some instances, yes. I mean, we have myself. I arrange and direct funerals, although I don't do as many as I used to.
Okay.
My son, who works full time for us, he arranges and directs funerals, and there's also another lady called Sonia who arranges and directs funerals. So
Okay.
between my son Joshua and Sonia, they do the majority of the arranging.
Right.
Where there are things that need to be booked in, or flowers ordered, or coaches ordered, or that sort of thing. There's another lady who works in the office. She mainly staffs the reception. Her name's Amanda. She will make calls to the coach company, or she will or call the florist and book flowers in, that sort of thing. So we sort of work together in terms of the arrangements, but we always make sure that we keep comprehensive notes so that we know exactly what's been booked, when it's been booked, and when it's going to be delivered. So yeah, I don't do as much funeral arranging and funeral directing as I used to do, but I do the odd one or two. And I mainly sort of oversee the operation, and make sure that everything is so I'll have an oversight of all the files, make sure that things have been booked in, check to see that the arrangements for the day of a funeral, because all families will receive the itinerary, what time we'll be coming to the family home, what time would you at church, what time would you at the cemetery, where we're going to drop them off afterwards, and I'll just make sure that everything's in place, for the most part.
Right. Okay.
And then on the day of the funeral, there are operatives as well. So there's people who come in to drive the hearse and the limousine, and also if the family don't want to bear the coffin, then we'll get bearers in as well to carry the coffin and to lower the coffin into the grave, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, it is quite a setup. Going from the first hour, in the first hour, we were talking about, the direct hits that we experience as a community when it comes to our funerals. But is that also the case when it comes to setting up the business of being a funeral director? How easy would you say that it is to become a funeral director?
I would say it's not that easy.
Okay.
Because the funeral industry can operate as a bit of a closed shop sometimes. We do get people sometimes requesting, the request work experience, or that sort of thing, and we have to be very, very careful in being able to filter out people who maybe just have a morbid fascination with death.
Yes.
And those who genuinely want to work in the industry, because there are some people out there who they've got some sort of compunction to see dead bodies, for example, and that's what they're interested in, that's what they want to see, and we have to be very, very careful because we're dealing with people's loved ones. Although the spirit of that person is no longer there, they're still someone's grandma, they're still someone's mother. We have to deal with people and treat people with the utmost respect. So and I think for that reason it can be quite difficult to get into the industry. If we don't have, for example, if someone comes and says, "Oh, well, do you have any work?" If we don't have any work, then what I always advise people is to ask around at different funeral directors and see if you can get some experience. Because there are other bigger funeral firms than ours who will offer to train people, but you have to go through their sort of training program, etc. And if they do train you, then they will expect you to remain with them for a certain amount of time. And I think the fact that sometimes people are asked to remain with a company for a couple of years or 3 years or something like that, I think that puts a lot of people off. But it is an industry where you're in it for the long haul. If there's work that we have available, then I'm happy to interview someone and bring them in. But it's because we're quite a small firm. There's a lot of times we don't have sort of work available or work experience, that sort of thing. But I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody who's interested in coming into the industry and advise them and direct them in the right way. I mean, for example, the lady who does our embalming, she approached my father-in-law a long time ago. She said she wanted to be an embalmer, and he just didn't have the work for her. And what he said to her was, go to this company. I won't name the company. He said, go to this company. They'll train you. But he said, but they will expect you to stay. They will expect you to stay, because if they put you through the embalming exams, which are very, very expensive, they're going to expect you to stay. And that's what she did. She went away. She trained with that company. She stayed with them for 5 years. And now she works as an independent embalmer, and she does our embalming for us, which is great, because she's a really good, really good embalmer. She's also she was in the fashion industry previously, so she's a makeup artist. She knows how we are supposed to look, and she's got an eye for detail. So she's a fantastic embalmer. We're really pleased to have her working with us.
Yeah. Okay. And yes, as somebody who knows your embalmer, I have to testify. Yes, she's amazing. And it's so important because she knows how to work with the different complexions, which is something that is missing with other funeral directors, in the industry. Not much attention is paid toward how we look. They don't know how to do our hair. They don't know how to handle our skin, and just those little touches that make the difference, such a difference. Yeah. So, with regards to what you were saying there about, okay, my mind has just gone blank. What you were saying before about
getting into the industry.
Yeah, getting into it.
It can be quite difficult. But I would say to anyone who's interested in getting into the industry, be persistent. You may get knocked back, you may not get taken on. But if you've got a passion to work in this industry, then be persistent and just keep applying, keep knocking the doors, keep going back.
Keep going. I think that's really good as well. I do think that it's a bonus when a company says that we're going to keep you on for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of work that really does need experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. And it requires experience and competence. And you have to be able to. So I know that the way that things are nowadays, particularly in the world of work, people are not going for apprenticeships. People are not going for work experience to gain that grounding within an industry. People are not going for that. People are thinking that well, I've done this course, therefore I should be stepping out as a manager, without having done the groundwork. But unfortunately, a lot of industries are not like that.
Yeah.
You can't go into the building game at manager level. They're gonna give you a broom, and they're gonna show you where the kettle is. And that's the way it works. And so it is about long-term commitment in order to get to where you want to be. And that's the way the industry works. So you have to have the competence and the experience to be able to survive in this industry. And it's also quite expensive. It's an expensive industry to sort of to get into and start up. A lot of funeral homes have been passed down from elders. Fathers worked with their son, or fathers worked with their daughters, and then it's passed on, and then they run the business in their image and their vision, and then they'll pass it on to their children. It's a difficult industry to get into in terms of being able to find the right premises, being able to you have to work out whether or not you are able to purchase vehicles or whether you're going to hire them in.
Right.
And if you're hiring vehicles in, then you're beholden to the company who owns those vehicles.
Yeah.
And if they're unable to supply you on that particular day, then you're gonna have to find someone else. And funeral vehicles are not cheap. They're very expensive
Yeah.
vehicles. Even 10 and 12-year-old vehicles that have not got a lot of mileage on. They've not got a lot of miles, because funeral cars don't do a lot of miles.
Yeah.
But so they've usually been looked after, so they retain their price, and they're very expensive to put on the road. So it is a case of being able to have the finance to be able to get into the industry. It can be quite a difficult thing, and it may require a conversation with a bank. You may spend the first 5 to 10 years of your working life paying back the bank.
Right. Yeah.
If we're getting into this industry, because frankly, it's an expensive industry to get into. And you also, if you set up 2 miles down the road from another funeral director,
Yeah.
then they're going to look at you and think, well, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because you're stepping on their territory, so to speak.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
can be it's difficult sometimes to get favors from other people in the industry. It's not an easy industry to get into, but it is. I think it's definitely worth it if you're able to find the right premises, the right place, the right community, and the right staff, because you have to have those client-facing staff who are able to deal with grieving families, not take on because some people in grief can become very confrontational, can
Right.
become very
Yes.
argumentative.
Yeah.
You have to rise above that and remain professional. You can't get into an argument with a family who's in
Yeah.
grief, because no
Yeah.
matter what's going on for you as a professional, it's always 10 times worse for the family, and
Right.
that has to remain central to what you're doing.
Okay. So it's not an easy job. It's
No.
not like I'm a funeral director and this is hard work you're describing here.
Yeah, it's a vocation, because at the end of the day, if somebody calls you at 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
their grandmother's just passed away, and they want you to come and collect their grandmother and bring her into your care, then the fact that it's 3 o'clock in the morning doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
They've called you when she's passed away, and you have to be professional, courteous, polite, and as you get to the house, there may be family members there who don't want grandma to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
That can be quite distressing for a family. Seeing the head of the family, the matriarch, she's leaving now.
Yeah.
That can be very distressing for a family, and people can be quite confrontational. But you have to remain professional, and just remain on top of your professional game, really, and just be kind as much as you can be.
Okay. How do you not take it on? There must be times when you've experienced being a community funeral director, as well as everybody else, but there must be times when you have come across a family or a funeral that of the person that. How do you maintain your composure, and what do you do with regards to self-care?
I think well, in terms of how I personally manage working a funeral, particularly for someone that I know. I mean, I've done funerals of family members, aunts. My favorite uncle. We did his funeral last year. My cousin Frederick passed away a few years ago. We did Frederick's funeral, and that's very difficult, because you're at an emotional. You're very emotional, because it's your family, it's someone that you love. A guy that I played and coached basketball with for 30 years. He passed away a few years ago. And I had to take his funeral. it's very, very difficult because you become very emotional. But at the same time, I always keep in mind what my father-in-law used to say, in that he said, look, no matter what's going on, and even if it's somebody that you know and you really, really love, it's always worse for their family than it is for you. And you have to keep that central. You have to make sure that you are providing them with the care that they need at that time. So I suppose I've just developed an ability to be able to sort of step back a little bit and provide the care to the family above my own sort of needs.
Yeah.
In terms of self-care, I go out cycling quite a lot, and I process my, if I go cycling on a weekend, I'll process my week. Okay. I will process any difficulties that I've had, and it's really nice because I cycle along the canal usually, in Leeds, and I've actually found a new route to the north of Leeds, which is a new cycleway, and it's really nice. It's sort of, there's flowers on either side. It's just really beautiful. So I cycle, process my week. I also listen to a lot of music, listen to a lot of podcasts, that sort of thing. And sometimes when I finish work, I might come home, and I'll park the car outside the house, and I'll sit in the car for half an hour, just processing the day. Just sort of, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to take, if I've had a bad day, I don't want to take that into the family.
Yeah.
I don't want to sort of like, take it out on my kids. Or I only live with one of them now. My youngest is 12. I don't want to take it out on him.
Yeah.
I don't take it out on my wife. So I'll just sit in the car and just decompress a little bit, think about the day and process. And that's kind of what I do for self-care. Other people meditate. I know my wife does a lot of meditation. She burns candles, and she reads a lot. And you've got to do something to take you away from the work, because it can be quite heavy at times. It can be very, very heavy.
Yeah, I'm sure it also helps as well to have your wife in the industry, so she knows what's happening, what conditions you're working under, and what situations are coming in as well. I think that's probably a tremendous help.
It really is. I mean, she doesn't currently work on the funerals now. She used to do funeral arranging, funeral directing. She used to work in the office. She's still a partner in the business, but she works from home. So she will deal with, staff personnel issues, staff training, that sort of thing. And she also runs her own business as well. So she's a leadership coach, working with mothers in leadership roles. So it's quite a niche sort of coaching group that she's got. But yeah, she does individual coaching and group coaching for mothers in leadership roles, as well as running the funeral business with me.
Perfect. Okay. It's really nice to know that as a family, you've sort of got so much kind of going on with regards to business. I personally believe that we should all have our own business, or we should all have something that we are doing away from mainstream work. And I think that more and more we're going to see the importance of having other streams of income and, being able to provide for ourselves. So we're coming to the end of this hour now, to the end of this interview. What advice would you give to somebody who was looking to join the funeral industry?
What I would do is I would do a lot of research. I would find out who your local providers are in your local area and in the wider area as well. And I would go out and have conversations with people. If you're determined to get into this industry, then somebody will have an opening somewhere.
Right.
So I would go out and have conversations with people, knock doors, offer to, offer to work voluntarily for that's what my father-in-law did. He offered to work voluntarily for 2 weeks. And when they saw his aptitude to work, they said, you know what, we've got a job for you, and they took him on. So it's a difficult industry to get into, but once you get in, then you're in, and you're able to get the training, the experience, and that sort of thing. So I'll say be persistent, go and have conversations with people and research. And if there's someone who's offering to have a conversation with you, list the questions, list the things that you want to know, the things that you want to glean from that person before you call them. And then, no matter, because the conversation it'll go everywhere. But if you've got a list of questions, you can bring it back and say, okay, thanks for that. Now, could you give me the answers to this? And then you're building a conversation around a script, basically. And you're able to take on the information from that person, because most people are willing to have a conversation. Most people are willing to have a conversation. It's just that sometimes people are busy.
Yes.
They've got families that they're working with. They're sort of thinking, well, I haven't really got time to speak to someone who's just, prospecting or whatever. But just be persistent, and, work out. If you were thinking of, for example, opening a funeral home, if that's what your ultimate aim is, drive around, the local area, drive a little bit further, and work out how many funeral homes are in your local vicinity. Right. How many, what's your competition going to be like?
Yes.
Because there'd be no point opening, when there are 7 other funeral homes within a mile of you.
Yeah.
Because you're not gonna get the work, because people will go for the tried and trusted, the name that they've seen on the high street for so many years. And you little old you who's just set up won't be getting any phone calls. So, just have a look around, and it might be that you have to go out of the area that you're comfortable in.
Yeah.
Be where is there, okay, what's nearby? Is there a hospital nearby? Is there another funeral home nearby?
Yeah.
Where's the nearest cemetery? Where's the nearest crematorium? All these things you've kind of got to factor in and think, okay, if I'm going to set up, how am I going to work this, and who's nearby that can help me?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, it has been really interesting speaking with you this day. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you are busy, and I know that you've got a lot to do with running the business. Today as well, we have learned how much work you actually do, and it's not something to be sniffed at. And I really do hope that respect for your job, for the industry, is heightened by having conversations like this, because as your father-in-law was trying to sort of enlighten people, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, just literally educate people and let them know this is what it is. It's not a mystery, and it's not as doom and gloom either, as as it can often appear at first.
Yeah.
I think this is a beautiful work, so I salute you for doing this work. And just, if there's any way, shape or form that I can be of service in the future, please do call on me. But yeah, we appreciate you. And my intention is that appreciation for you and your colleagues, the families as well that work within the funeral industry, only increases and gains. Okay.
And thank you, Laura. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here. And I really salute the work that you do in sort of bringing people together in this industry, particularly people from our community. I really, really appreciate the work that you do and highlighting the issue of end of life care, death, dying, and preparation for that eventuality. I really appreciate the work that you do, and it's important work. Thank you.
It is, and I enjoy it, and it's a pleasure. And to be able to work with, my brothers and sisters like yourself, shoulder to shoulder. I believe that there is going to come a time where there is going to be mass death, and so we need to be prepared for that time. And yeah, this is it. This is the preparation. So thank you so much. It'd be lovely if we can speak to you again in the future.
Absolutely. Yes. Be happy to come back.
Perfect. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. We will be seeing this hour out then. We'll be ending the show now with another jazz track. And once again, I'm going to dedicate this to your friend Richard and just bid you all one love.